Welcome back to the Laceby podcast as part of our Christmas Lace Notes series. And I'm asking that question that's come up because there's going to be a new Wallace and Gromit film. And of course, everyone knows that the important part of that film is cheese. So, is it too early to talk about cheese? Today, I'm going to dive into that topic that really brings in holiday gatherings to that special feeling and that special anticipation, the good cheese board. And I don't think it's too early to talk about cheese at any point in the year. This weekend, I was out shopping and might have accidentally bought an incredibly large piece of cheese for myself. And as I was saying to the girl at the deli counter, well, why not? So, from beautiful cheese balls to unique gift ideas and the rise of goats and sheep milk cheeses for lactose-sensitive or intolerant friends, I'm going to hope that this episode will inspire you to make cheese a star of your Christmas celebrations. So, grab a warm drink, get cosy, and let's get into it. So, why cheese makes the perfect Christmas gift? Now, let's kick things off by talking about why cheese makes an incredible Christmas gift. Cheese is not just a food, it's an experience. It's something that brings people together. It's something that you share. It's a unique ability to turn a casual gathering into something special. Plus, with the rise of artisanal cheese making, there's a huge variety to choose from, making it easy to find a cheese that fits anyone's taste. Think about it. You could gift an aged cheddar to someone who loves bold, classic flavours, or maybe a triple cream brie for a friend who's all about that rich, creamy texture. And for anyone who's a little bit adventurous, something like a smoked Gouda or a blue goat's cheese brings that warm, smoky flavour or that piquant blueness that's just perfect for winter seasons. That's why it's great to have a cheese gift. And don't just stop at the cheese itself. Add in a few crackers, a mini jar of chutney, or even a unique cheese knife for a complete experience. You could personalise these gifts to suit your friends and family's tastes and add in a handwritten note explaining why you chose each cheese. It makes such a thoughtful and delicious present that's sure to be appreciated. However, I'm going to mention one thing that comes from previous experience. If you're giving someone a present that needs to be refrigerated, do tell them. And don't let them stick it under the tree for 3 weeks only to come up with a strange smelling, leaking present when they come to open it on Christmas Day. It's all very well saying that, of course, they'll know what it is. If you don't tell them, they don't. So, with any type of food that's perishable, if it's given as a present, remember to let people know that. I know when we were having our wedding, we were deciding whether or not to go for a wedding cake, or because of me being a celiac and wondering whether or not we could get some gluten-free cupcakes, whether or not we should go for a cheese cake. And I don't mean a cheesecake as in a cake made of cheese. I mean 4 or 5 rounds of cheese stacked on the top of each other to look like a wedding cake. In the end, we went for the cupcakes. We found a really good baker. But had we not found them, we would have gone for the cheese. When I was at school, we were always told that the key to creating that perfect cheese board was around having the main things that you should always have as your centre. So let's talk about cheese boards. Cheese board at Christmas isn't just food, it's a piece of edible art that becomes a centrepiece of any holiday table. Heck, you can do this for your birthday or make a special meal for the two of you at the weekend just by bringing out some really great cheese. And the goal is to make it look stunning and inviting while offering a variety of flavours and textures for everyone to enjoy. So let's walk through the step-by-step guide to creating a Christmas cheese board that'll wow your guests. So, general guidelines. Start with a variety. My wonderful, wonderful cookery teacher, when I was at school, which, let's face it, it's really scary that that's like 42 years ago, always said that you need to have 3 key things on your cheese board and then build from there. A great hard cheese. So, a really good quality cheddar. Let's face it, there's nothing like that fantastic cheddar. I am obsessed with good old Wookie Whole. as a nice cheese, or some of the more piquant or more mature ones that are out there. So, like Lincolnshire poacher. But that is a acquired taste when you've got a very strong cheddar. So you might want a more medium one to add to it. Or perhaps something like, one of my favourite cheeses in the world, a double Gloucester, as that counteract to something like a Lincolnshire poacher. Then you want a soft cheese. Usually that's a camembert or a brie. And remember to get that in enough time that it's actually ripe. There's nothing worse than trying to get a knife into an unripe brie and yet basically attacking it and it's not going there. But overripe when it's running off the board and disappearing down over the table as though it's got a life of its own out of something in Star Trek is also not quite so good. You could go for a goat's cheese. Some of the ones like the ash coated ones have got that different taste to it. Or if you're just going for an ordinary cheese that you can get easily from the supermarket, the good old favourite Boursin with a stinky amount of garlic and herb in there. Because let's face it, Christmas is a time when sometimes you have people around that you don't actually like. Consuming a vast quantity of garlic cheese is a great way to persuade them not to talk to you or even come within about 20 foot. I was talking to my sister recently and we were chatting around the time that we were at my grandma's funeral, and I consumed my body weight in Boursin cheese in order to make sure that my eldest sister did not come anywhere near me. Probably shouldn't have mentioned that. Anyway, carrying on. You could go for an aged Gouda, for something like a sort of caramel-like sweetness, or a creamy brie, and a crumbly Roquefort for something that goes into the blues. Not everyone likes Stilton, so for those that are not a great blue cheese aficionado, then a lighter, more creamy Gorgonzola. But these days there are some fantastic goat's cheese blue cheeses out there. Hubby, who is very, very lactose intolerant, we're talking big white spots appearing on face, gasping and falling to the ground, was a great Stilton eater. And it was a thing that we always had, one of those ceramic dishes that had Stilton in it every Christmas. Let's face it, not a great way to buy a Stilton, but you got a pot afterwards. And it was sort of a symbol that you'd had a great Christmas if you bought one of those from Sainsbury's. So he still misses his blue cheese, and we order him some nice goat's or sheep's blue cheese every year around Christmas. But these days I've been picking up the same thing in Aldi, and he says it's just as good. So there's always an option for people who perhaps can't have the staked cow's milk. Then, of course, there's adding the festive flavours. One of the things around Christmas used to be that you got hold of things that shouldn't be in season. My older sister was married to a greengrocer, high-class greengrocer, of course. He had a shop in Ascot. And one Christmas, he brought in a punnet of strawberries. You wouldn't expect to see those at any time except for the summer. And we all had one strawberry each. Thought this was absolutely marvellous. So those Christmas flavours of things like cranberries in a white Wensleydale, now you can go and buy any time you want, any day of the year. But it makes it special to add those flavours in. So add in a cheese that's got flavouring in it, perhaps a smoked applewood cheddar, something a little bit more different, a double Gloucester with some garlic and herb if you want something else. Or for those of you with a little bit more adventurous, perhaps one of the new flavours that have got hot chilies and things in it that can often quite take your breath away. You'll also see those little tiny sample cheeses wrapped in wax, and it's an opportunity to buy, say, 2 or 3 of those to treat yourself to something a bit different. Add in the festive flavours in other ways, so perhaps around the chutneys and pickles. Now, hubby sent me off looking for a pickle with no onion. Apparently he's allergic to them. And trying to find something like that can be great fun. Now, we've always made our own chutneys, but you need to make those around August to have them ready and mature for Christmas because you're putting vinegar in them and the vinegar needs to mature out. So trying to find something at short notice can be difficult. And he said to me, well, what's the difference between a chutney and a pickle? Well, strictly speaking, pickles are things where you pickle to preserve an item, and a chutney is more of a spread. But in the UK, we often use the term pickle to cover things like Branston pickle, which is more of a chutney, if you're strictly speaking, which is something you add with the cheese or hams. When you've had a big Christmas dinner, whether you're a turkey fan or you go for lamb, or we usually have beef, having it cold the next day is a joy, and that's sometimes when that cheese ball can come out. Or maybe you've done a ham for Christmas to have on Christmas Eve, and you're having the cheese ball to go with that. So a good pickle, the idea behind that is to add a sharpness and a tartness that cuts through any fat in what you're having. Let's face it, cheese has just a teeny weeny bit of fat in it. So picking out something that's going to go with that and add to those flavours and complement them is always a great idea. You're going to see things like cranberry-based chutneys out there. You're going to see things with orange in them, and these are great complements for those flavours. A classic one to have with it would be figs. So a nice fig chutney would be also a great one. And a classic one that is often had out through Spain and through Portugal is to have with that quince jelly. And that works really well. And you'll find those now quite easily in a lot of the deli counters because it's becoming more normalised in this country, the UK, to have those in there. So you're looking at something that will go with textures as well. So things like pecans and nuts, so they can add a sort of nice crunch to them. But pecans aren't overly crunchy, so it gives that little bit of texture, but also adds a little bit of sweetness and flavour to it. Adding in some fruits and nuts, fresh figs as well, are really great if you can get those, and some grapes, the classic one there. Dried apricots add a nice chewy texture, and almonds and walnuts can work as well. Walnuts have that slight bitter aftertaste that can go well with a creamy cheese. When I was at school, the classic thing that we used to have to prepare for our end of term cookery classes with our wonderful cookery teacher that was done for the staff Christmas gathering was we would take cream cheese and pipe it into long sticks of celery and also into dates. I don't think anybody does cream cheese on celery anymore. Very funny credit in 1970s. But you could be the person to revive celery eating. So why not? So we've got cheese. We've got some lovely crackers. Sorry, lovely flavours there. But you do need some bread and crackers. Adding in some nice crackers is also a great way to give something to eat with the cheese. Chop up some apples, maybe toss them a little bit of lemon juice to stop them going brown. And having a fantastic cracker with a slab of cheese on the top, maybe a little butter, and a big slice of apple on the top is just beautiful. Now, being that I am a celiac, there are certain crackers of my childhood that I can no longer have, but I do remember them with great happiness. In one of my previous blogs, I talked about the anticipation of Christmas food and the things that you used to get when you bought the hamper that my mum used to save up from the milkman. And in there was always a Jacob's biscuits for cheese. You never bought them any other time of the year. They were a Christmas thing. I mean, these days, working in marketing, you think, well, that's the reason why some things just don't actually carry on being made, because if we only ever buy them at Christmas, what's the point of producing them? There's not enough of a following. But in there was obviously the standard cream cracker, which is a nice thing. But my favourite was always one of two things. A Ritz biscuit. I love a Ritz biscuit. You can eat them with something or on their own. And Shah make a fantastic gluten-free one called a saltee. And the other one was having a water biscuit or a Cornish biscuit. You know the Cornish wafers that were like, to me, they seemed like about an inch thick. I think they were probably about half an inch. And they had lots and lots of layers to them with some good quality, slightly salty butter on there and a big plob of cheese. It's just perfect. These days, with the fact that we can get tomatoes any time of the year, little tiny cherry tomatoes or even the little baby plum tomatoes are great. You've got two things you could do there. Serve them raw, either on their own to just pop in your mouth and have a little chew, or chop them in half so they're easy to pop on your cracker with your cheese. Or you could actually make your own sort of roasted tomato condiment. Now, I just get a simple oven-proof dish, pop the oven on at around 180, which would be around a gas mark 5, and then pop in some cherry tomatoes so there's a layer on the bottom of the um, oven-proof dish, a little tiny bit of light olive oil. I'm not a great fan of the full-blown olive oil flavour with things, but if you like that, that's fine. It's not great to cook with because it can smoke, but that's a preference if you like cooking with it. Toss them in a little bit of oil and then pop on a little bit of mixed herbs. If you can go for the basil and oregano type mixed herbs, great. If not, herbs de Provence are just as good. And then just roast them off in the oven for about 20-25 minutes until they start to sort of brown a little bit and they start to pop and the juices come out. Toss them a little bit, put them in about halfway through so they brown on both sides, and you've got some fantastic roasted tomatoes. Or, if time is not on your side, pop to the supermarket and buy a packet of sun-dried tomatoes. If you get the ones that are the sun-kissed, they're a little bit softer, but they can be quite sharp. Roasting a few tomatoes off in the oven and serving them either warm or just cooling them gently in the fridge and bringing them out, absolutely great. Then you've got your antipasto. So you've got roasted peppers. Oh, don't stick out an entire roasted pepper. Do chop it up into small bits and give people enough forks and knives that they're not swapping over the same knife for cutting up blue cheese with the cheddar. Make sure that if you put anything out like the fantastic chutneys, each one's got a spoon. Don't want cross-contamination here because there's nothing worse than people double dipping. We don't want to go there. We also like having things like other things you can add there. I like caponata. I became hooked on this when I discovered that you could buy it fresh from a deli near where I worked. It's like a roasted aubergine with different things in there. Sometimes you can get it in a jar. Sometimes you might want to make up a batch for yourself and serve that as well. And you might want to add in some meats as well to go with it. Personally, I would put the meats on a separate board or plate so you're not getting cross-contamination. It's only because cheese is likely to be around longer and have a longer date, but if you've put the meat next door to it and it touches, you can cause it to then start to go off. But some salamis or sauce and sec, the French one, perhaps some Parma ham or the version, the jabon hams from Spain and the Iberian Peninsula. Yeah, there's lots of nice things you can add in there. And the thing with a lot of these type of meats is they have that sort of that sixth taste, the umi, that sort of earthiness that comes from that type of thing that goes then with the cheese. So we got our cheese board. How are we going to show it off? Well, a good quality chopping board is a nice idea and one that doesn't wobble when you're trying to cut on it. If you've got a slate chopping board or serving dish or something else, then go for that. That's fine. I've got a beautiful cake platter that's absolutely flat, and it works great for serving up cheese as well. Now, what are we going to have with our fantastic cheese board. You could be having this as what my husband calls a nibbly tea. So we might also have perhaps some crab or something out with it to make it more substantial. Maybe some bread as well, um, or some other fish, maybe some herring. He does love his soused herrings, and again, because these are in vinegar, they cut through that fattiness of the cheese, any ham or anything got with it. So thinking about something that would go well with these, a classic one would be some mulled wine at Christmas. Now, whether you're having the classic German or you're just doing something a bit mulled for yourself, then that's all great. If you're not a person that likes to drink at Christmas, there are alcohol-free ones that you can buy off the shelf. Or why not just do the same thing as doing for a mulled wine recipe as doing it with some cranberry juice, and just do the same thing. When I used to go and do reenactment many years ago, we used to go up into London to meet up with the regiment I was in. And at Christmas, they would do mulled wine by taking a poker, sticking it in the fire until it was red hot, and plunging it into the wine. I don't think that's quite how I'll be doing it in my household, bearing in mind we have no open fire, so that could cause a bit of a problem. But just gently heating it up on the hob is a great way to do it. You can buy mulling cider sachets with all the bits that you need there, but the classics to add are always the cinnamon, maybe a little bit of star anise, and pop in those other Christmas flavours like allspice and ginger. This is always a lovely thing to serve to people, and it will remove some of the alcohol out of the mulled wine, but remember that it does still have some alcohol in it, especially if you're one of those people that thinks it should be fortified by adding in some brandy. Maybe not to do if you're driving anywhere. But over Christmas, there are other things that you might want to treat yourself to. Perhaps a champagne to push the boat out. And there's some fantastic English sparkling wines that are very much in the champagne vein that are coming out this year. I know there's some new wineries opening up by some of the main famous champagne names in the UK. Or go for Prosecco. Remember, Prosecco comes both sweet and dry. I know that many of us used to drink the old Aspis Spumante back in the 70s and 80s, and they both come in dry and sweet as well. The other thing to go with, say, some of the bolder flavours, some of the goat's cheese, the sheep, and the blue cheese, is to think about spiced cider. So I know in America they refer to it as spice cider or hard spice cider, depending on whether you use apple juice or you use pure cider. Again, that with some cinnamon in it will give a real nice mellow flavour. A classic at Christmas, of course, is to have a Pimm's number 6 cup with hot apple juice. So those of you who think Pimm's is for summer only, that's a Pimm's number 1, which is a gin base and fruity flavours, whereas a Pimm's number 6 is a brandy based drink. You heat your apple juice up and pop that in. Again, not one to really drink when you're out driving. So maybe if you have got to be the designated driver, do some with just some apple juice and make that have a little bit of flavour to it. What we have seen recently is the rise of goat's and sheep's milk cheese. And let's have a talk about this. These cheeses aren't just nice and delicious, but they're an option for anyone who might be sensitive to lactose. There are a number of cheeses available that I've seen recently that say lactose-free, but if you actually have an allergy to cow's milk as well, that's not going to work. So goat's and sheep's milk have a different protein structure and generally contain far less lactose than cow's milk. It makes them much easier to digest. So why should you add these to your holiday spread? Well, they give very different flavours and textures. And texture is something that I think we forget about often when it comes to putting together a spread for ourselves or perhaps friends and family visiting. The standard goat's cheese or chèvre that has that tangy fresh flavour pairs really well with honey and fruit, and perhaps popping a little pot of honey there would be interesting. I usually order our Christmas cheese from the Nottingham Cheese Shop, which I have to thank two friends for popping me onto that one. And they sent me through a very small sample pot one year of honey with white truffle in it. Hubby took one look at that and he went to the back of the cupboard. He's never eaten it. Might get that out this year, see what it's like. But you've also got sheep's milk like Machengo, which has a more nutty richness to it, and that goes well with figs with a little drizzle of olive oil. And one of the things that also works well are the fact that you can sometimes bake or cook these. Now, halloumi is the big cheese these days in the UK. I apologise for the pun. One of the things that we know about halloumi is very much that people like the way that you can slice it up and you can fry it. You can turn it into fries and things like that. I wouldn't suggest breading it and popping it out or breaded mozzarella sticks with this because they're going to be a little bit more greasy. But just gently heating it in a frying pan and serving it warm. And I love halloumi. I love the texture of it. It's that squishy, slightly rubbery, bouncy feeling and the flavour that you get from it. A lot of them come with mint on them, or one that I've had recently is actually wrapped around a mint leaf. So mint is obviously a flavour that can go with it. The thing about these is that you're offering something warm that goes with a cold layout as well, and that can be an interesting addition to the textures and the flavours. So when you go and have a look, whether you're shopping at your local Lidl, they have the more continental cheeses normally in a separate fridge, and there'll be different things there. Try those. If you fancy something like a good old German smoked cheese, go for the one with ham in it, or the one that's got chives and onion in it, or just the plain one. If you don't fancy a large piece and think people are just going to ignore it, get slices. Try pop those on, or chop them up into quarters so that people can try a little bit. The other thing is to encourage people to try and eat the cheese, so sometimes it's worth taking a small corner off to make it look like someone's already had a go. You could then go and try out more upmarket supermarkets and see what they've got in the way of the smaller family-run farms that actually produce some outstanding cheeses. As I said, there's one that comes wrapped in ash, or a cheese that I remember first came out when I was doing my O-level cookery, which was Cornish Yarg, which is a standard cheese, but it's wrapped in nettles and garlic leaves. You know, these are different things you could buy a small piece. And if your supermarket has a deli counter, it gives you the opportunity to buy a small piece to just add, so you can have different things to try out. So whether it's a sort of soft chèvre or a firm manchego, consider adding goat's cheese and chips cheese to your board. If you want to add something else that's hot, what you could do is take some ripe but slightly firm pears, slice them up, and put a little bit of sheep's cheese on the top, and just grill them so they're warm and the sheep's milk's melted. With that, then you're facing using a fork to eat it. Other things you can do with a cocktail stick or fingers. So that's just bringing me to the end of my cheesy episode here. I hope you're feeling inspired to make cheese part of your holiday celebrations, and whether it's through a nice gift, a crafted cheese board, or some festive pairings of your favourite holiday drinks, it really does have a way to bring people together. And I can't think of a better way to celebrate the season than to having a nice cheese board and watching a Wallace and Gromit film. Anyway, don't forget to check out the blog post for today's episode. I'll link it in the notes where you can see some of what we talked about. Plus, you can find some tips and ideas on our website. So thank you for joining me, and I can't wait to see how you all add cheese to your Christmas festivities. So until next time, enjoy the holiday season and keep things cheesy.